Hello, everyone, and welcome to Heart and Hand, the Rangers podcast. This is your extra show for the week. My name is Cammy Bell. I am your host, as always, and I'm delighted to be joined on this week's extra to talk about the shaming of the sheep as we talk about a fantastic performance and result against Aberdeen at Ibrox on Wednesday night by one of my faves, Mr. Ross Hutton. Ross, thank you so much for coming on.
No, thank you very much for having me, Cam. It's good to be here.
Ross, we'll jump straight into it because Rangers were able to beat Aberdeen and Kevin Clancy pretty convincingly last night, despite the latter's best attempts to try and see what he could do to stifle and ruin the game, as per usual. Coming out of Ibrox on Wednesday, Ross, I'll be honest with you, I was probably towards the latter stages of the game thinking this has got all the hallmarks of some absolute piece of nonsense equaliser for Aberdeen, because it just felt that Rangers were chapping on the door so much and not being able to convert chances, and the way how our season's gone, albeit we were playing at home, so it's a slightly different kettle of fish. But thankfully, 7 minutes of injury time saw Rangers get the second and third goals that put, I think, a deserved headline on a pretty convincing performance and got us well and truly over the line. How were you feeling about last night and the way how Rangers went about their business?
Yeah, I think you hit the nail on the head there, Cammy. It would have been an absolute scandal had Aberdeen taken anything from that game. I think Sky had thrown up stats after the game there when I was watching the highlights when I got home, and what was it, 29 shots on goal we'd had an XG of 3, so that was obviously borne out by the actual result as well. That was compared to Aberdeen's XG of 0.28 and 6 shots on goal, so I think the stats don't lie in that kind of scenario. And we knew what we were watching at the time as well. Cammy would absolutely tried to batter the door down for Aberdeen for the best part of 90 minutes. There was moments of stasis in that game, particularly after the goal in the first half, but I think there was plenty of opportunities there where we could went and gone and put another couple of goals past Aberdeen. I think that's a big frustration from last night, to be honest, is that it was only 3 goals and that the fact the game was still live going into added time. We take one of our numerous chances that we created both in the second half and the first, and that game's long dead. And then we maybe do have an opportunity to bring on some players on the bench who we'll talk about in a wee bit more depth in a moment. So I think that's a kind of big frustration. But the positives are that it was another fairly comfortable home win for us. And how often have we said this, Cammy? How often has it been talked about? The home form has not been our problem this season at all. I think that's what 12 games we played at home now. We've won 11, drawn 1, and obviously the draw against Dundee United was a major disappointment, but in the grand scheme of the league season, that is not our problem at all. It's the away form that's absolutely killed us, and that's just the problem that remains to be solved by Philippe Clement and this management team. But just taking last night in isolation, as I think we probably should in that regard, another very comfortable home win, and if you can't enjoy beating Aberdeen 3-0, then what's the point?
Yeah, exactly. And there's already, I've had a quick scan through some of the media responses to last night's win, Ross, and is interesting as to how much it's all about Aberdeen's run of form currently. Obviously started off the season brilliantly. We were chasing them for a little bit and we managed to overcome them. Their form has fallen right off of a cliff, and again, going into the game, I was thinking to myself, it's always their cup final whenever they play against Rangers. You see it within some of their players. You see it certainly amongst their fan base. You saw it when we played them up at the Tawdry. You'd think it was, I don't know, some sort of birthday celebration up there, the way they were carrying on. They had a very good away crowd at Ibrox on Wednesday night. And the thing that's probably interesting to me is, there's always going to be this bit of needle with them. We always have that relationship with Aberdeen. Frankly, I do enjoy beating them. I'm not going to deny that, but putting them to the sword in such a fashion is always fun. I don't think, and I will hold my hands up to my ignorance with this. I don't watch Aberdeen outside of our games against them. I've got zero desire to do so, and I don't think I fully appreciated, until I saw it in the flesh, just how poor that Aberdeen team has now become. The defence is at complete 6s and 7s. It's all over the shop. But I'm not going to suggest that that's the reason as to why we beat them. We did have a number of chances that were created through our forward play. Danilo came back into the team, which I'll be honest with you is something that I really need him to emulate away from home. We will obviously talk about the fact that he had to go off with a knock. But for me, it's always about trying to be as penetrative, as forward playing as you can, and there's some real fluidity, I think, amongst that forward four. Now, there's going to be some arguments and some discussion, I think, about player contributions. I know that on the Patreon site last night, we had some conversations with some of our subscribers about, where's Czerny at? How can he produce? I was getting some of that within the group chat. Even if you do have one of those players not necessarily performing at their maximum, I still feel there's far more threat from the rest to be able to counter that. And Rangers at times produced some really, really good phases of play, which split the defence, looked to be able to try and get to the byline. We could do better and we could be tidier with some of the finishes for sure. But it's absolutely, as you mentioned with your stats, not down to lack of chance creation. If we could have got a few more goals just to settle in nerves, it would have been ideal.
Yeah, no, I completely agree with that. I think two things can be true at the same time. Obviously, you're absolutely spot on what you're saying about Aberdeen's recent run of form. And I say even recent, it's gone on for a long time now. I don't think they've won a game since the start of November last year. And considering the way that they started the season, setting off like a house on fire, beating us up at Pittodrie, it's really fallen off a cliff. And it's quite remarkable to watch, actually. It's a spectacular fall from grace from where they were. But even against that, we still need to go and create the chances. The impetus is always on us at Ibrox, regardless of who we are playing in the league. And to be honest, for the most part, I'd include even an old firm against Celtic in that. The impetus is on Rangers to go get on the front foot and take the game to the opposition domestically. And last night is no different, regardless of Aberdeen's form, if they were winning games or not, which they currently are. We still need to go and create those chances. We were helped by some really, really poor Aberdeen defending, and I'm the same as you, Cammy. I don't really watch them outside of the games against us, but I was even a wee bit taken aback last night about just how bad they were at the back, and I think the first goal exemplifies that. And Czerny, I know, there's a lot of noise about a lot of the time, and I share a lot of the same frustrations. I think he probably could be a wee bit more physical in the tackle and tracking back. For me, there are moments where he does dither a wee bit on the ball. I think there was a chance late on in the game that could have sealed it 2-0, and he had the option to shoot or pass and really done neither, get caught up in two minds. But he is effective. I always fancy Czerny to create a chance or to do something with the ball. He is a really potent attacking player for us. If you think of the first goal there, the Aberdeen boy just completely loses track of where he is, loses track of the ball, just lets it bounce off him. But Czerny's alive to it, drives into the box, cuts it back for Diamande, and that's where the first goal comes from, with that deflected shot falling to Igamane, who I know we'll speak about as well, Cammy. So I'm a big fan of Czerny. I really like the contribution that he's made to Rangers this season, and he's a leader as well. I think a lot of players look up to him in the dressing rooms. A couple of high pressure press conferences that he's been sent out to do, and I know that's maybe not the best judge of things, but I think it does show a level of respect that the rest of the playing squad and the management team have for him as well, because I think he's stepped up a lot of the time this season. He's been a really good attacking player for us. He's a constant threat, particularly at Ibrox. There's questions about his effectiveness away from Ibrox, which I think are absolutely valid, but at home, he's always one of the first names in the team sheet for me, Cammy, because I always back him to go and create a chance or be a threat, and I think for the most part he was that last night, despite it not being his best game, and I mean that actually as a bit of praise for him, because when you're not playing well, when things aren't working out for you, and they weren't really happening for him last night, doesn't hide. He was still asking for the ball. He was still trying to make things happen. And in the past, that's not been the case for the players at Rangers. So I do think that's a positive. And I think we should maybe be a wee bit more circumspect in the criticism that we're giving Czerny. Because for me, of all the problems we've had this season, he's nowhere near the biggest one.
Yeah, it's interesting because what I see a lot from him, and it's probably it's my angle, I think, where I sit at Ibrox, where I'm in the corner at the main stand in the Copeland, and so looking towards the Park of the Sea, I always see him right on the edge of the line, and he's always looking for that ball over the top. And I have been thinking about this because we've been talking about it in various chats. I know that it's kind of been a topic of discussion for most Rangers fans, that you'd like to see a bit more from him in terms of his overall productive output. I think that we can't criticise him as a result of wanting to be able to get through on goal, wanting to be able to try and get shots away, because I would never criticise a player for that. I think, as you say, he can sometimes have an issue with his decision making. It feels maybe like he takes slightly too many touches, and his touches, but his first touch to be able to get onto those balls is excellent. So even if it's a slightly challenging ball, I always rely on him to be able to get out there, get it under control, and then look to see what you can do with it. he can drive and he can go towards it. Maybe tries to beat a man one too many times. But again, I take heart in the fact that he is looking to push it forward and to be able to go through on goal. He's probably thinking to himself, and I remember the chance that you're talking about because I was screaming at him for him to square it in that chance in the second half. But listen, do you know what? I totally get it, and he has scored goals. He will continue to score goals, and so I definitely think he's a useful asset to have from that side of it. But one man that we we are just talking about constantly at the moment is Hamza Igamane. I was a little bit taken aback when I first heard the Igamane song to the tune of Super Ali, who's my absolute hero, by the way. But I'm going to be honest with you, the wee man's totally deserving it, because to get the opening goal last night in such a fashion of didn't need to swipe at it, didn't need to be able to have a shot away at first time, not being able to assess his options. As you rightly said, Czerny is alive to the loose ball coming out from Ross Hutton. He passes it or cuts it back to Mohamed Diamandi. There's a block shot, falls to Igamane, and just absolute coolness and composure just slots it away and give Rangers a deserved lead at that point. Another million on the price tag for me, Ross. And I'll be willing to accept any bids and start conversations for me around about 35 to 40 million pounds.
I don't know why you're being so conservative with that. Price up. In a really, really dark season, Igamane has been the bright, shining light for us. He's been an absolute revelation since coming into the side, and he's a very, very natural finisher in a way that I don't think we've had since Jelavic. And I'm not saying that to really heap praise on the boy or to heap pressure on him either. It's just an observation. You think of Morelos, right? When I know strikers get compared all the time. Morelos was a bit of an instinctive finisher, right? I don't think he was a natural finisher. When you look at a lot of Morelos' best goals for us, it's instinctive, in the box, headers, sticking a leg out or being in the, right place to go and smash a ball in. He was an absolute battering ram. You look at Igamane's finishes, a lot of one-touch finishes, being in a brilliant place in the box, headers, all round different types of goals, perfectly encapsulated, of course, by that hat-trick at Easter Road a couple of weeks ago. He's a very, very natural finisher, and that's something that I think we need to try and go hell for leather in order to develop, because if other clubs are sniffing around him, which I think when you have a player of this talent, that's inevitably going to be the case, all we can hope for is that they'll say, can we let Rangers develop him for another season, another 2 seasons, and really maximise that value that we get from him there, because we'll be able to cultivate that level of natural finishing. That's really the kind of big hope for us right now, because the worry is, as you boys spoke about in the car pod at the end of the game last night, with every goal, with every game that goes by, as another club that will start to go, oh, by the way, he could be a serious talent. So I don't think we'll lose him this month. I think we could be in for a very interesting summer, but the hope is that they give us more time to be able to cultivate and, polish those rough edges, which he definitely still has. Because if we're able to do that, we're able to get it for another season, hopefully make him successful, make Rangers successful, and then we can punt him for an even bigger fee. But he's such an exciting prospect. I've not been as excited about a new signing or a player coming through like this in years. Cammy, he's really, really, really a massive hope for us right now.
Yeah, and I mean, listen, I know what you're saying about this current transfer window. When he scores a hat-trick at Old Trafford, I'll be honest with you, I think it puts him right in the shop window for the English market. But we will see. Rangers, I mean, again, continue to chap at the door of that man, Igamane. So unlucky with, I think the technical term for this shot, Ross, is a thunder bastard, where he just had an absolute perler. It was a great save from Ross Hutton. I'm going to give him credit for that. But I was choking for that to be able to go in, because again, the flight behind the ball as well, he just caught it so true. I can't, spend an hour on this particular pod talking about the number of chances that Rangers had, but this is one that I just would have loved to have seen sail into the top corner.
Yeah, no, it would have been an absolutely fantastic goal. And again, there was a couple of chances like that last night where we got ourselves into good position. We created really, really high quality chances. Really good, strong efforts on goal. And I think the Aberdeen goalkeeper did, have a really good game in the end. He made a couple of cracking saves. But this would have been an absolute beauty if it went in. You're absolutely spot on. But it's chances like that you're hoping over the course of a game. I mean, if that goes in and it becomes 2-0, then we all relax a lot more. And I reckon the team probably relax a lot more. And we maybe do go and put 4 or 5 past Aberdeen, but it's creating that pressure for yourself by not taking those chances. I'm not putting the blame on anyone here, it's a fantastic save, but by not taking those chances, by those efforts not going in, you lead to the kind of the tension that we got, particularly in the last 15-20 minutes of the second half.
Yeah, and like you say, I mean, I don't know, it's probably my fear more than anything else as we're talking about that potential Aberdeen equaliser, because I felt that there were times, aside from a very audacious lob against Liam Kelly and my inherent terror at how we defend corners, I genuinely didn't think Aberdeen were much in the game at all. And it's probably just the scar tissue of how we've been performing recently. The league table doesn't lie. And just the fact I wanted to, as you say, get the second goal just to make it nice and comfortable for ourselves. In Dreamland, we're back to another 3-0 win or a 3-0 lead at halftime, and then potentially we can do some rotation, even been able to try and see Zach Lovelace. However, we will talk about that as we come on to speak about the Fraserburgh game at the weekend. Rangers were able to see it out, Ross, with it has to be said, centre back to centre back, as Clinton Asala, who for me last night, I thought he was fantastic at being able to play some very, very interesting passes that again could split the defence, but he was always looking to be able to get the ball forward. Now, he was unlucky with a cross that he had put in before the one that proved to be the assist for Liam Balogun. Balogun obviously having to come on as Robin Propper had to go off injured. But this was just a fantastic whipped cross right into the back post. And great to see Liam Balogun back in the team. We know that he's had his injury issues. We know that he's got his consistency issues. But, bringing the big man back in and, just seeing that desire from Nsiala, he doesn't look out of place now, I think, in this Rangers team. And you have to give credit to such a young lad who, and let's face it, has been thrown into the deep end because of an injury crisis with our centre halves. I'll be honest with you, I'd like to see a lot more of him now.
He's definitely staked his claim, and that's all you can ask for any kind of young player. He didn't have an easy introduction away at Dundee. That was a bit of a nonsense of a game, and I think you could tell in that game that although he performed well enough, there was still the rough around the edges, as you're going to get from any player, not young or old, being thrown into a side when they've not kicked a ball all season. But St Johnstone, Aberdeen again last night, Cammy, he's done what he's had to do. He's been called upon. I think he's been solid enough. And I think last night was by far and away his best game for Rangers out of the three. Not just the kind of 2 balls into the box, and obviously Leon Balogun was really unlucky with a header earlier on that hit the post. But his all-round defensive game, I thought he looked really assured last night. I didn't think he looked panicked. There was a couple of really lovely touches in and around their own box just to get away from an Aberdeen striker who's pressed him, create space, and then move the ball onwards. Don't get me wrong, when he's doing it at the time, my heart's in my mouth. I'm the dad in the stand screaming for him just to clear it and get rid of it. But that's why he's the footballer and I'm not. He was so assured and confident on the ball. And for such a young lad to come into a side that has been struggling, particularly away from home, to have that introduction away from home, that potentially confidence-knocking experience, but just to get himself back up, dust himself off, and have those really 2 assured home performances, I think is a massive, massive credit to him. And the ball in for Balogun's goal, I mean, oh my God, see if that is sharing their hands. You were absolutely raving about it and the quality of the output. It's a miraculous ball. And Leon Balogun, I think if people could have picked a goal scorer, he would have been right up there. A very, very popular player with the fans, of course. I think you could tell how much the goal meant for him. He really, really enjoyed that in his celebration. And at that point, when obviously the second goes in, it's game over. And I think we're all thinking, thank God for that, because while you're right, Aberdeen didn't really offer anything. It's that whole thing. You've got scar tissue. You've got that in the back of your mind, thinking, I've seen this movie before. I know exactly how this is going to end. But thankfully, in many ways, we managed to rewrite that script.
Yeah, and the victory sealed by a man who as you mentioned, popularity might be at the other end of the scale. Cyriel Dessers came on towards the end and made it look so easy. Such is the paradox of Cyriel Dessers. Aberdeen players caught under the ball. Dessers is through with a defender in front of him. At this point, Ross, I'm kind of thinking this is in the 97th minute, 7th minute of injury time given. And I'm thinking to myself, well, that's fine. Just take it a run. I don't really mind what you can do. And he manages to beat the defender with some lovely footwork and then just slot it so coolly back. It's 3-0 to Rangers. Game is over and done and dusted. Everyone is heading out the door at this stage. And, you know, my hope is, and, you know, I'm not going to go back in what I've said previously. I do hope Cyriel Dessers leaves in this window. According to some media outlets, there are a number of clubs across France, Spain and Italy looking at him. That'll do no harm whatsoever to potential suitors. But this is it's just a great finish from him. And this is why he's so topical amongst Rangers fans, because he can miss from 6 yards, but yet he can run the entire length of the half and put it away like as if he's on a 20-goal scoring streak.
It would sum up Cyriel Dessers' time at Rangers so well and so succinctly if his last goal for us was probably his best. And I think that might actually be the case with this one. It's a wonderful goal, right? Park opinions on Dessers for a moment, because we'll speak about it and you just have there mentioned it, Cammy. But park opinions on him for a moment. That's a wonderful, wonderful goal. 97th minute of the game or not, the ball comes down and he gets his space. He's 1v1 with the defender, right? Knowing that if he manages to get past him, he's going to have a shot on goal. Now, Dessers' footwork has been an absolute pain in the arse to watch throughout his time at Rangers. Think of the amount of times the ball's come to him in the middle of the park in those kinds of situations, Cammy, and he's looked as though he's never kicked a ball before in his life. None of that last night. Just full of confidence, which again, I don't know where that's come from, considering he's not really been playing and been put out of the team, but it was as if he's full of confidence, running at the defender, brilliant footwork, sends him basically the wrong way, and then it's a lovely, lovely finish. The keeper has absolutely no chance. So where has that been? Cyriel would be the question I would ask, but I think we're all over the point of trying to work out how or why Dessers scores some brilliant goals that he does and misses absolute sitters in the very next minute, the very next game. Take it in isolation. I think it's an absolutely brilliant goal. Widen it out and bring the opinions on Dessers back in. I'm the same as you. I hope he leaves in this window. He'd leave with my best wishes. I think he's a limited player who's been capable of some quality moments, who has always tried for Rangers. He's been much maligned by myself. I'm not going to hide from that fact. I think one thing I do have respect for is that his attitude's always been good. He's always tried. He's always tried his best when he has played for us. He's not good enough. That's the long and short of it. I don't blame him for that. It's not his fault, but he's not good enough, and I think we need to be ruthless and try and move him on, particularly if there are clubs who can take him and his wages off of our hands. And if he does, I think he'd leave with most of our best wishes, to be honest. He's tried to serve the club as best he can. It's not his fault that he's not good enough, but let's be adults, let's be ruthless. He needs to move on this window. If we get the opportunity to sell him, then absolutely do that.
Yeah, and I think, there's a part of me, maybe it's me getting a little bit more mature in my older age, Ross, but there's a part of me always thinks about the human being, not just the footballer. And
he's spoken of that, Cammy. Sorry to interrupt. He's spoken of that before, and I think it's been quite refreshing to actually listen to it. Because, I mean, think of the time that he was essentially booed onto the park at Ibrox against Celtic. Think of the amount of times that he has been absolutely pilloried from, pillar to post. I admit I've been part of that. I've been so critical of Dessers at his time at Rangers because he's not good enough. But there is a human in there. Maybe as fans we do need to remember that a wee bit more. Now, again, I totally include myself in this. But he's been open about it. He's spoken about it. He's spoken about the psychological help he's received and how that's managed to keep him on track and keep him focused and keep him just trying to keep, to play his football and keep his head down and avoid the noise as best he can. I think he'll be a very interesting person to listen to once he leaves Rangers, and he's maybe a wee bit freer to speak about that experience in a fuller sense. But he has spoken about it. He's been very honest, and it's something as fans, I cannot stress this enough. I include myself. I'm not lecturing anybody, but that is something as fans we maybe need to be a wee bit more mindful of. Can't say I'm holding my breath for it right enough.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've seen other players. I don't necessarily confine us to Rangers. We've seen other players for clubs who pretty much know that they're not, in favour. There's a player playing ahead of them who's played far better, naturally becomes the starter, and you might be reduced to a bit part player. And to cause an effect of, they've phoned it in. right. It's probably the best way I can put it. I don't attribute that to Cyriel Dessers. I think, like you say, there's parts of his game that we've said for a long time now that we wish was far better and far more consistent. But last night for me showed that he is looking to still continue to do what he can. He was offered the option to leave in the summer. He chose to stay. If he's offered the same option again in this window, I think he now would reassess that decision and probably come to a different one. But by and large, you have to admire the fact that he is looking to still contribute where he possibly can. It wouldn't be remiss of us to be able to talk about a Rangers win without having to mention the referee. Kevin Clancy doing his usual last night of trying to make the show all about him. I haven't had an opportunity to see it yet, but my understanding is that from the guys watching on TV last night, Ross, that the challenge that led to Robin Proper going off, he did take a sore one. I think his studs had got caught in the turf prior to this, but he did get a sore one and potentially a red card. Obviously, no VAR review. Nick Walsh on VAR didn't look to be able to make anything of it in what felt to me like a very, very quick VAR review, which was a running theme throughout the game. But the thing that annoys me about this is that I can count of 4 players. So Proper I've mentioned, Danilo, Hadji in particular towards the start of the game, and then laterally Raskin. And in actual fact, I'll include Diomande in that. All in the end of some fairly harsh challenges from Aberdeen. Now, although it is the referee's job to protect the players, and I totally understand that, what Kevin Clancy in every game I think I've ever watched him in fails to be able to do is communicate well with the players and run the game in such a way that if he does see a bad challenge, I'm not suggesting for a single minute every single one's a booking or a red card or anything like that, but manage the players in such a way to say, look, I've seen this, you were late to that, I've let play carry on, I'm going to let it go to now, but I'm telling you I'm watching it. I feel that whenever you watch him, and it seems to be far more the case against Rangers, that he doesn't seem to control some of these tackles going in. And there were several that happened last night that were late. They were probably born out of frustration because of how poor Aberdeen were playing. I do understand that, by the way. Football players do it. But I'm not willing to accept it when it comes to the cost of some of our players getting injured. Danilo had to go off with an injury last night. Hadji, I thought was going to have to go off at half-time. Proper did go off as well. It's frustrating for me. And by the way, it's also equally frustrating as well that I don't think that the manager said too much about it when I would have liked him to. Because these are the kind of things that we have to be able to try and call out. It just feels like this is a constant topic now of how poor the officiating is. But when our players are getting injured as a result of it, you have to be able to say, where are the standards here?
It's the same at Fir Park. I was thinking about that a lot last night, actually, while I was watching the game, because Clancy was the referee at Fir Park just over the festive period there. And there was so many, you and I were both at that game, Cammy, there was so many heavy, heavy challenges that went in on Rangers players that either just waved away or just, only gave a free kick for without punishing the other player with a yellow card. Same last night with Aberdeen. Now, if you're refereeing a Rangers-Aberdeen game, you should know, and he's been around the block long enough to know how spicy a fixture that can be. And in particular the way that Aberdeen are going to come to Ibrox and try and play. They're absolutely going to be trying to leave a stud in, leave a foot in, put themselves about onto Rangers players to try and break up our play, right? That's absolutely fine if that's the way we want to do that. Punish them for it. Punish them for it, because you start punishing them for it, they will stop doing it. It is really that simple. And we're not asking for special treatment. We're not asking for anything outlandish. We're just asking for the players to be protected and the laws of the game to be applied. So that's one frustration. The other one was, and this was doing my head in again last night, and very similar to Fir Park over the festive period, Kevin Clancy's stop-start approach to refereeing games is horrible. Absolutely horrible for you as a spectator to sit there and watch. And he can't really seem to make his mind up whether he wants to actually let play continue, play advantage, or pull it back and stop games. There were a minute of times last night where an Aberdeen player would just fall to the ground and he would stop and he would get up and he would try it again and he would stop the game and he would break the game up, and it stops our patterns of play forming and it stops us being able to actually go and impose ourselves on the game. And again, I'm not saying this in a sense that you should referee in a way that helps Rangers play to the best of our abilities. I'm not saying that at all, but I want a consistent approach. It's the same at Fir Park, where they kept stopping the game, starting the game, stopping the game, starting the game, particularly at periods where we were trying to build up a wee bit of momentum, and it makes it almost impossible to do it. So, of all the bad referees we've got in the league right now, and God knows we're not short of options here, he is by far the worst. He's the one that whenever I see he's going to be taking charge for a game, I do roll my eyes out the most, because you know what you're going to get. It's almost impossible to try and play in those conditions. You get players who can't build up any patterns of play. You know he's just going to stop it every 2 or 3 minutes whenever he gets the chance to make it all about him. And then even when they do get to that point, you've got players coming in and putting in heavy tackles that should be punished that aren't. So, yeah, it's another poor refereeing display from a poor referee.
Yeah, and listen, you've hit the nail on the head there. For me, it sometimes feels like as if he goes from one end of the spectrum to the other. He's either overzealous in what he's trying to do, and that's probably where you see it within the breaks of play and you know, how he wants to disrupt the flow of the game. I'm not even going to say necessarily breaking up Rangers' rhythm. I just mean the flow of the game generally, because it can swing both ways. But then equally, he just seems nonchalant and he'll just let things go that, 10 minutes beforehand he would have called out. It's so incredibly inconsistent and frustrating that it is ridiculous. But we haven't had an update. The manager wasn't able to give us an injury update on the players discussed. But my hope is that anything that they have picked up will be minor. Ross, just before we finish up in the Fraserburgh game, we are obviously midway through the January transfer window now. We've discussed Cyriel Dessers. Any potential offers for Hamza Igamane coming in for 100 million plus. The manager also made mention that it looks like Rabbi Matondo and Kieran Dowell could be on their way out of the club as well if they are going to get any offers coming in for them. That's probably not new news. I think that we have made a concerted effort across the course of this season to ensure that we could reduce the wage bill. Rabbi Matondo in particular is on some fairly decent money at Rangers. He's not getting, or he's not going to get, too much opportunity to be able to feature for us just now. Kieran Dowell, I'm sorry, and I know what I said earlier on about the human being, but Kieran Dowell, I don't understand how he's a Rangers player. I cannot see, given the number of chances he's been given under Philippe Clement, what he's bringing to that team. I'll be honest with you, I don't think these would be losses for Rangers. But what I think would be interesting, that if we do lose Cyriel Dessers, Rabbi Matondo, Kieran Dowell, amongst others who may potentially go, we don't know of any more at the moment. Patrick Stewart had said in his update last week that we would look at one, maybe two. I think we have to bolster those numbers a little bit if we do lose three from the playing squad.
Yeah, I agree with you completely about Matondo and Dowell. Again, no harm to the lads. They're just not good enough. They're not consistent enough. They're offering nothing. Matondo is on good money at Rangers, so if we can move him on in such a way that allows us to get that money back and save money on his wages and maybe reinvest it into a better player or a better option somewhere else, and that's good business in my eyes. Kieran Dowell, he's just taking up somebody in the squad on a match day. When he comes on, you're not going to get anything. If it was the case that he was creating chances and they maybe just weren't coming off, then okay, you can maybe try and make an argument in your head, but it's nothing. He's creating absolutely nothing. He's not offering anything in these games. So again, bit of a waste of a jersey in that sense. I don't mean that in a cruel way. It's just a fact. We all know it. If we can move the two of them on, then I think that's good business on our end, and hopefully at least save money on the wages, because I've got no idea, God forbid, even think about how much we're going to get for them in terms of an actual fee. Dessers is another one that we've obviously spoken about before, Cammy. He has to move this window if the option presents itself. I would hope that we can maybe try and go a best part of the way to recouping the fee that we paid for him. Given his age, I'm not being particularly ambitious in terms of how much we're actually going to get in terms of a profit margin, but if we can go some way to recouping the fee then and moving on his wages, then again I think that's good business. In terms of incomings, Lyle Cameron's a lot of chat about, of course. It'd be good to try and get him in this window, bed him into the side, give him 6 months to try and get the feel of the place. Obviously going into the summer, maybe give him some game time, that would be positive. I do still think we need another centre-half in. I think that's an absolute priority. I would like to have maybe seen that happen before now, as we sit record on the 16th of January, midway through the window. But we'll see how that goes. The striker thing's quite interesting because I think you're right in terms of bolstering numbers, and this maybe does bring us on nicely to the Fraserburgh game, where we're going to talk about different players that can maybe get some game time. Zach Lovelace made the bench last night, and the manager said the reason he made the bench was it was a reward for his efforts in training. He's obviously been training very, very well. I've had the pleasure of watching Zach Lovelace and speaking to him and covering the B team. He's a fantastic talent. He's a really good player. He was very, very highly rated down south before he came up to Rangers. He's a very interesting prospect. Now, if you can use Fraserburgh as a chance to maybe rest Igamane, rest Danilo, but give him a chance against a level of opposition that he is used to playing, against a level of opposition that I would expect him to play well against, and maybe start putting himself into the thoughts of the manager, because January transfer windows are not the best, we all know this. So if it gets to a point where we can possibly persevere with Igamane, Danilo and Lovelace until the summer, if Lovelace gets some minutes, gets some game time and hopefully gives the manager something to think about in that regard, I would view that as a positive. And if we can have players from the youth step up into the first team when called upon, as Ross McCausland done when he stepped up into the first team, that does take the pressure off of the external transfers a wee bit. And if that can plug a hole, at least until the summer, then I'd view that as a good thing if it takes some pressure off the January window and allows us to strengthen in other areas.
And that's the big thing. That's the conundrum. And again, we've spent a lot of time previously talking about where our transfer business has been so poor. But the challenge that we have at the moment is, who is going to be the manager come the start of next season? Who's running the show in terms of those transfers, being able to come in? How much outlay, do we have? It's fine being able to reduce the wage bill. And that's been a clear direction, I think, from COP and certainly the board in terms of reducing average age and wage bill. The managers obviously had some involvement within that as well. But given the fact that most of us have accepted the realisation that we're going to be finishing second, which brings me no joy to say, but it's where we are, it's the real world. How much do we want to spend in being able to bring in players that will help us achieve a goal that by and large should be fairly achievable with the current squad that we have now, even minus a few of the players that we just talked about. And so I think it will be interesting. Keen to get your thoughts as well on obviously all the rumours regarding Lyle Cameron potentially coming to us either now, which would obviously involve a fee, or a much lesser fee once his contract at Dundee finishes at the end of this season. Dundee have kind of made some noise in parallel to the Conor Barron situation with Aberdeen. I think it would be a good signing for me. I feel for Barron. I know that he's lost a touch of form. He's obviously been rested. He did play a lot of minutes at the beginning of the season, but he was exceptional in a lot of the games that he played in. If we're able to emulate that with bringing Lyle Cameron in, who adds a different dimension, I think that could be a very, very exciting prospect.
I think Rangers should be on the lookout for all the best talent across the globe, but particularly bolstered by young Scottish players. It's exactly the kind of signing that we should be trying to make, because there's very little downside and very high upside if it does work out. Conor Barron's a good example of that. So obviously we have had to go through the motions with Aberdeen with regards to a fee. But if Conor Barron does kick on, and he is still a young lad and it is still his first season, but if he kicks on and then we do manage to sell him down south for profit, then that's good for Rangers. I know Aberdeen get a percentage of that apparently, but that is very good for Rangers. Lyle Cameron's the same. These are the kind of low risk-ish signings from Scotland, from talented players who you're not going to go and break the bank to be able to bring into the club, that we should be keeping an eye on. Rangers should always be trying to keep an eye on young Scottish talent progressing, because we should be the premier club for them to come to and to develop as a result of that. That's been a kind of wider frustration for me for a number of years, particularly with the youth set up and not actually giving youth a chance and allowing them to progress. But the good thing is these players are already playing in our league. They're playing at a good level. You can see the talent that they have. Lyle Cameron's a perfect example of that. So I do think if we can move on the three aforementioned players, Dessers, Dowell and Matondo, and bring in Lyle Cameron in this window for a fee, it's not going to be a break-a-bank fee like I say, but a fee nonetheless, I would still say that's good business, because you give him that 6 months of getting used to Rangers, getting used to his teammates. Right, okay, the manager's position is up for debate right now, but that's not his fault. That's not really his concern. If you manage to kind of bring him in, get him used to the place, get him used to the building, give him some minutes in the Rangers jersey, and allow him that time to bed in before the summer and hopefully kicking on next season, which will, as we all know, will hopefully be a much more successful and better season for us, I would say that's good business.
Yeah, I think that's fair. And just to finish us off, Ross, Rangers start their Scottish Cup campaign at Ibrox at 2:15 on Sunday with the visit of Fraserburgh. Fraserburgh, I think, sitting mid-table in the Highland League at the moment. I don't think that it's going to be much of a contest. My hope is that we're going to use it as an opportunity to bring back some players from injury. Obviously, James Tavernier came on against Aberdeen, having just come back from having a knock. We've discussed already that it would have been nice to be able to get a couple of those goals and those chances converted early doors against Aberdeen to possibly see the introduction of Zach Lovelace into the game. My hope is that we're going to use the opportunity for Sunday to play a team that maybe hasn't had as many chances, maybe get some of the youths in, and as an opportunity for some of those players coming back from injury. I wouldn't be opposed to the idea of Jack Butland and James Tavernier playing as the senior players, but I would like to see us giving an opportunity to some of those guys who have been on the fringes.
Yeah, absolutely. I'd be playing Bailey Rice, for example. I'd be playing Zach Lovelace. I'd be playing Ross McCausland. Use it as an opportunity to get minutes in the legs for those players and for the likes of Rice and the likes of Lovelace, guys who I think do deserve an opportunity, have deserved an opportunity in Bailey Rice's case for a long time. Give them that opportunity at what is a game that is as close to a bye as Rangers are going to get at this stage of the competition. I mean, no disrespect by that. It's a fantastic game for Fraserburgh. It's going to be brilliant for them. But realistically, right, let's call a spade a spade. It's as close to a bye as we're going to get. So use that as an opportunity to try and give these guys some minutes, get minutes in the legs, get fitness there, and give them an opportunity to go and impress you. Because they can only play what's in front of them. The likes of Lovelace and Rice I'm talking about in particular here. It's not their fault they've not been getting on at a higher level, but use that as a springboard, use that as an opportunity to go and put the thought in the manager's mind and give him a reason to then go and select you for obviously the Europa League games coming up, to be in the squad and then hopefully to get minutes domestically as well. That should be their motivation in a game like that. I'd be really, really disappointed in the manager. And he's given me no reason to not be disappointed in him in this regard if he doesn't decide to use Sunday as an opportunity to play some young players. Because if you can't do it then, if you can't do it at home to Fraserburgh in the Scottish Cup, when can you do it, right? It'd be ridiculous not to utilise this opportunity. Rest some of the senior players, give Igamane the weekend off. He doesn't need to be there. Let Danilo rest up for a wee bit, let Hadji rest up for a wee bit. Play some of the kids, give them an opportunity. That's what this game should be all about on Sunday.
I'm also keen to get your thoughts because I know you follow B Team and the Youths very closely, and I've done some great work on our Patreon site, keeping us updated with some of that development. Keen to get your thoughts on whether or not we would feature Finlay Curtis, who has been having a absolute topper of a season so far. I totally agree with the players that you've already mentioned. But I think this would be a really good opportunity to bring Finlay Curtis into the kind of real senior level. We know that some of the B team players have been in and around the first team training with them, etc. I don't want to overextend, but, and again, I take it with all due respect to Fraserburgh, I don't think that this is outside of the expectations to be able to see that young man feature, because I would love to see him getting a run out for the first team. Not for the whole game, I don't mean not like that, but I just mean, just to be able to play some minutes, because I think it'd be good for him to be able to play in front of, it won't be a sellout crowd, I think it's fair to say, on Sunday, Ross, but good for him to be able to play at Ibrox in front of a good number.
But it's not just Finlay Curtis, and I absolutely agree. If we can get him in the matchday squad, if you can get him some minutes, then that's absolutely fantastic because he has earned it as well. But there's a wider point there about using this as an opportunity to let a couple of the B team guys step up. Lovelace and Bailey Rice are the two main focuses because I think they're the two biggest hopes, if we're being totally honest, in terms of people who have been around the matchday squads so far. But the manager, who I know keeps a constant eye on the B team and the academy as well, should be using this as an opportunity to say to the likes of Finlay Curtis, okay, well, come into the matchday squad, we'll start you on the bench, and then if the game allows it, which you would really hope it would, we'll give you some minutes. Go and show me what it's about. You scored some brilliant goals in the Challenge Cup this season. I think he's a guy who's absolutely deserved to be in the conversation for a spot in the squad on Sunday. Go and use that as an opportunity. It's an absolute tap-in for it, and to do anything daft like playing a team of senior players, which I know sounds stupid, but come on, don't be daft. Use it as an opportunity to give these guys a chance. Show them that there's a pathway into the Rangers first team, because currently it doesn't look like it, and you're going to lose strong young talents because of that if they don't see a way through the door into having a career at Rangers. So go and give them that opportunity on Sunday. Let them show you what you can do.
Yep, and we will be covering the Fraserburgh game and the build-up to it over on our Patreon site. Please feel free to jump on over and join a fantastic community of nearly 8,000 of paying subscribers who are just the absolute salt of the earth in terms of discussing all things Rangers and joining us within our podding community as well. Head on over to patreon.com/heart and hand. Thank you to our show sponsors, NordVPN and also Zenith Coins. Check them out on zenithcoins.com. Our producers, Mike Lee and Paul Myers, all of you for listening, but also thank you so much to my very good pal Ross Hutton for coming on. And listen, it's always fun to talk about putting Aberdeen to the sword.
Pleasure was all mine, Cammy. Thanks for having me.
David will be back with the flagship on Monday to unpack the Fraserburgh game. I'll be back with you next Friday as we will be talking about, hopefully, a very, very productive win at Old Trafford, fingers crossed. And as I say, we've got loads of Rangers content over on our Patreon site in the meantime. Thanks, everyone, for listening. We'll be back with you on Monday. Bye-bye.